Hillary Mann-Leverett. She's a former official at both the White House and the State Department. I asked her what she made of the fact that the U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates was in Bahrain just before the Saudi troop movement.
Well, it's very suspicious. I think that everybody should be asking, what was Secretary Gates doing in Bahrain 24 to 48 hours before the Saudi incursion into Bahrain? This is a very serious question. Did Secretary Gates give a green light either by what he said or even more importantly by what he did not say? Did he choose not to say anything to the Bahrainis, to not take a position about a Saudi incursion into Bahrain? This is reminiscent, if you remember, in 1990, the end of July 1990, when then U.S. Ambassador April Glaspie was sitting with Saddam Hussein in Baghdad, and she took no position on inter-Arab affairs, and then Saddam invades Kuwait. Today, you have Secretary Gates going, did he take no position on inter-Arab affairs when he was sitting with the Bahrainis? And then you have a Saudi incursion into Bahrain. The geopolitical consequences of this are enormous, and we need to know what Gates said to his Bahraini counterparts and what is the U.S. position for the disposition of Bahrain. Are we okay with the Saudi incursion? Are we okay with the Saudi seizure?
Up to this point, though, the demonstrators in Bahrain have been very clear. This is a protest about democracy. It's not a sectarian issue. How might the Saudi incursion affect that narrative, though?
Well, I think that what's the interesting thing here, too, is that the Saudi incursion is not decisive enough. It's not strong enough in terms of the number of troops to really make a difference to put down a protest. But what it is just good enough to do is to stoke sectarian tension. 1,000 Saudi troops is not going to change the disposition of Bahraini politics, but it is enough to stoke tensions and to really inflame Shia-Sunni discord. And if that's what the Saudis and their supporters want, this is a really dangerous situation.
Should we, though, then get the sense from the pronouncement we had from the Pentagon and the Saudi action, though, perhaps that the Pentagon and the administration here in Washington doesn't feel it could prevent the Saudis from going ahead with such an incursion, such as the fear of the Saudis, at least, about what might be happening in Bahrain?
It's hard to believe that the United States does not have enough influence and ability to work with the Saudis. This is a longtime ally. We've had a very strong alliance for over 60 years. It's hard to see that, but we've also seen, again, in a very parallel way, that even though the U.S.-Israeli relationship is so strong, when it comes down to it, the U.S. does not have the leverage to stop the Israelis from doing what they think they need to do. And in a very parallel way, maybe it is the case that we do not have the leverage to stop the Saudis from doing what they think they need to do.
Clearly, as far as the Pentagon is concerned especially, the presence of the Fifth Fleet is key to what they're thinking about in Bahrain. What effect would a victory for the opposition have on the Fifth Fleet?
Well, there's I think, a scare that somehow if the opposition were to come into power in Bahrain, they would expel the Fifth Fleet. That's unfounded. From people I speak to in Bahrain, including Bahraini parliamentarians, they would not be in favor of expelling the Fifth Fleet, but they would not support, they would find offensive if the Fifth Fleet, the U.S. Fifth Fleet, were used to militarily attack Iran. And this is the core problem for the U.S. administration. They cannot have these uppity protesters taking their military option vis-a-vis Iran off the table.
Hillary Mann-Leverett speaking to me a little earlier. The UN Security Council has held talks in New York about a possible resolution to implement a no-fly zone over Libya. A spokesman for the French delegation, which has been pushing for the move, called Monday's session substantive. But with China and Russia both wielding a veto and having voiced concerns over the proposal, it's unclear what will happen next. Scott Heidler reports.